Good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome on into your FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight on this Friday. And it's time to tap in with Mary O'Connell and get an update on the world of cold chain and running on ice. Mary, thanks for being here this morning.
Anytime, guys. You know that this is the ultimate Friday start to your day. The ultimate start to your Friday day is you get your cup of coffee, you get your little running on ice preview, and then you work really hard so you can watch the show when it comes out later today.
There you go. Summer Fridays are like almost at the end, so you got to cool off while you have the chance and can skip out a little bit early on your Friday afternoon. Speaking of temperatures cooling off and staying hot, today that is our very hot topic on running on ice. You've got a really great guest diving into what it takes to control temperature and some outside factors that are really going to factor into that. You are with a guest who is Fred Wu, and he's joining you to talk a little bit about what it looks like from a climatological perspective. I love that word. Talking all about temperature control. Give us a little update on who your guest is and where they're from.
Yeah, so we, like you mentioned, we have the wonderful Fred Wu this week from Delta Track, and we really kind of dive into, cold chain. The whole purpose of it is to, protect goods that need to be stored at a certain temperature. So that really is the core essence of it. But that gets a lot harder when, we've said a bunch of times on the show, a common example is driving through the desert of Arizona. Obviously, your reefer unit's going to have to work a lot harder, and the conditions are a lot different for that versus driving through maybe a Minnesota in the middle of June. So really something that we've kept an eye on, but honestly, this summer, we've had the hottest summer on records. Like, I think in some of those heat maps that you see of like the record highs, I didn't even know that black was a color on those. And I was like, oh, wow, that looks bad. It is. It's when it's like super, super, super hot. I mean, we saw pavement melting in parts of the country and other parts of the world this year. So the challenges for cold chain and keeping goods cold when they're basically driving in the middle of the desert or very hot areas when the outside temperature could be over 120 degrees with humidity or with a heat index, it's really important that cold chain is, adapting and coming up with solutions to keep those and protect those products, because some of those, it's not just, some salad might get a little warm or some lettuce might get warm and get a little wilty, and that will reduce its shelf life. That's obviously a problem, but it's something is like, medical or pharmaceuticals or something where if it falls outside of that temperature range, it could potentially be extremely problematic and possibly fatal for someone. So it's something that everyone's really kind of having to accommodate and make sure that, can we handle these extreme temperatures that our goods are going through?
So speaking from a meteorologist perspective, when we talk about climate change and the rise in global temperatures and the shift that we see in extreme weather and patterns, we talk a lot about vulnerabilities, and that's how we kind of frame it towards the general public. It's like, okay, a population has a really big vulnerability because you might be impacted by more landfalling hurricanes because you live on the coast. Or, this population might be impacted by a vulnerability because they live in the California desert and climate change is causing a shortage of rainfall there. Therefore, they don't have the crops growing that they need. But we don't speak a lot about vulnerabilities in goods like this. We talk a lot about vulnerabilities in people, not a lot about vulnerabilities in goods. And I think that it kind of gets swept under the rug, and it's a conversation that's really worth having, because it is very economically impactful, not just with people impact, right? People first, economic second. It's hugely economically impactful for a lot of these companies. And if you can't find a solution to go ahead and mitigate some of this extreme weather that we're seeing, you are going to feel an impact to your bottom line, because you're going to have spoilage and you're going to start racking up insurance claims or freight that can't be delivered, or in worst case scenario, you're seeing an impact to your people, right? Your drivers that are driving through Death Valley don't have the resources they need to stay cool, therefore they could have a people impact. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of those solutions, and kind of maybe reframing that view from just, okay, this is a people vulnerability to an also goods vulnerability?
So a really easy example for that is produce. If you see your produce coming through and if it, slightly goes out of temperature, okay, well, lettuce may wilt, berries may not necessarily stay fresh, but you can still consume them. But ultimately that's contributing to food waste, which is contributing to food scarcity among the people part of things. And then also in a much more practical application, this season's supposed to be one of the busiest hurricane seasons on record, right? Well, all of those goods that are coming in through the ocean or, shipping containers. It's like 3 times more expensive now to ship something on an ocean container. So being able to work with a partner as a temperature controlled shipper, being able to work with a partner that understands that. So for example, if I'm not relying just on dry ice. If I have invested the technology in kind of something that will keep my goods cold as long as I need them to, whether that's through solar or plugging into a ship power or something like that, then being able to divert away from a port that is experiencing severe weather and maybe having to take a couple extra days to go around the storm or go to a different port, being able to be flexible like that, and then in turn have those trucks waiting at that port wherever it lands. Being able to work with a partner that understands that and is willing to help you along with that is going to be the easiest solution, because that way no product is getting spoiled and you're not having that many disruptions in your supply chain, because you are able to be flexible and you are able to kind of make those accommodations based off of weather or temperature or other things like that. That flexibility is going to be key as we move into not only hurricane season, but winter weather. And then as we start up again next year, maintaining that is going to be the biggest advantage that you can have, because that means that you can adapt to weather, global factors and other things like that. So it's really important to maintain that flexibility and make sure that you're working with a partner that has that, because otherwise that's just only going to increase your waste and increase your insurance claims and reduce the revenue that you have.
And hitting on one of those points that you just brought up that I think is super important is it's not just about protecting things from heat during your hot months. It is reducing those disruptions that are possible through any time of the year, right? You're not just talking about freight that can melt in hot weather. You're talking about freight that can get too cold in extended periods of time if you are out in extended cold weather, like what we saw in the Texas deep freeze a couple years ago. But more than that, it is all about that disruption mitigation and really being able to navigate and keep things cool when they're needed, keep things warm when they're needed, and finding that delicate balance. Back to your guest, back to FreightWaves, back to Delta Tech. Where do they sit in this kind of space and what they provide for the cold chain industry? That'll kind of wrap us up and give us a good little intro into your Running on Ice segment today.
Yeah. So today we really kind of dive into the importance of that temperature monitoring and that basically constant location monitoring. And it's more than just track and trace. It's kind of knowing where goods are, what temperature they are, and then also, just because of knowing constant location, knowing where something is, it can help you kind of, as we mentioned earlier, divert away from those problematic situations. So that's really kind of where Delta Track sits, is maintaining that location services and those temperature monitoring and basically being that solution that can kind of more or less be like, oh, hey, this could potentially be a problem. We should move to this solution. That's really kind of where they sit. And obviously we break that down further into our episode today, which, in case you want to know more about that, it comes out today at 2:00 Eastern right here on YouTube. And if you're more of an audio person, you can catch it anywhere you get your app podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
There we go, Mary. You know where to send the people. And then, of course, head on over to FreightWaves.com and subscribe to that newsletter as well. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mary. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.